Okay, hey everybody, welcome to another episode of On the Wrist from Off the Cuff. Today we have a cool new review for you from the brand Creux Automatiq. They're basically a popular Australian-based micro brand that offer affordable Swiss-made luxury timepieces. And I gotta say, they've been on my radar for a while, and I'm really happy to be able to share these particular models with you guys because, I'm a big fan of that kind of Gerald Genta-inspired porthole style watch. That steel sports integrated bracelet space is really blowing up. It's kind of the hot new thing. Obviously everybody loves a good dive watch. Everybody loves a good vintage style big crown dive watch, but there's something about these porthole integrated bracelet watches that are just really catching fire right now. So some key common characteristics in design language when you're looking for this type of watch, I'd consider this kind of within two different places there. As far as it could be worn as an everyday watch, really that versatile blend of sporty and dressy attributes are what you're going to be looking for. But of course, I also think that this specifically is in that space that you would consider those integrated steel watches, with that style that's really back in vogue right now. You do, there's a similar look and aesthetic, of course, that you're looking for. So you will have, of course, those typical Gerald Genta inspired design cues. And honestly, everybody from Tudor to Gerard Perregaux to Bell and Ross to Wempe, all the way up to a Lange Söhne, essentially, are doing these types of watches. Although the Lange does get away with actually having a traditional bracelet lugs, but they just kind of made it look like it could be an integrated bracelet. So with all that said, let's go ahead, get this piece in hand for a closer look. All right, guys, the nice thing here is I'm able to show you two different specs of the same model. We have the integrated steel bracelet and also the integrated rubber strap. And honestly, I was kind of expecting to just fall in love with the bracelet, which I did. I mean, it's killer. But this strap is actually surprisingly good. It just makes it feel like such a sportier, more versatile watch than the bracelet does. Although the bracelet is, it still helps it be quite versatile. I have to say that really for me, the surprise was this rubber strap. Really, really beautiful, guys. So we'll go ahead and let you kind of gaze upon the excellent dials here while I talk about some of the specs. Now, this is the Diamondback from Creux Automatiq. This is the CA-06 essentially, and that means that's that similar color tone there. And then they have other models with other color tones. Now, essentially, these the Diamondback model carries on that tradition that's pretty synonymous now with the brand from their debut Ghost series, which is a really cool line. They're a little bit larger, but they kind of have that high-end skeletonized porthole style. I'd say similar to like a Hublot, but obviously with less negative connotations around them. And they're generally pretty cool looking watches, and with that success they were able to kind of put out a little bit more of a refined kind of everyday piece, a little bit scaled down, and I have to say I'm really happy that they did. Now these go for $15.50 on the rubber strap and then $18.50 on the steel bracelet, and that's direct from Creux. As far as the specs go, the diameter is 40 millimeters, and then you have a 10.6 millimeter thickness there and a 47 millimeter lug to lug. Of course, these are made out of a 316L stainless steel. They're brushed and polished, and then they actually have this really cool PVD clear hard coat for a little added extra protection. And I feel like that's something that isn't really mentioned, and I didn't even know that until I got them in hand and I realized they just had this like kind of cool little darker hue to them. I mean, not to the point to where you think it's like maybe made out of titanium or something like that, but it does have a little bit of a tint, and it ends up looking really cool, especially over the polish. I think that's where you really get something special, and I don't know if the camera's going to be able to pick it up, guys, but this compared to a regular steel watch definitely has a slightly darker tone, and I gotta say, for me, it really works, especially the fact that they do have these high polished surfaces on there, so it really plays with the light and just dances with it. And also, I mean, this is a press loaner that's gone around to a couple different places, guys. Look at how well loved and maintained this is. And I've dealt with a lot of press loaners. I have to tell you, typically they're pretty beat. So I can only imagine that this one is in such good standings, not necessarily because people were nicer and more careful with it, but more so because this thing is tough, and that coating not only looks good, it actually does add some functional protection there. So really cool from that aspect. Now, apart from the price, guys, of course, you are going to get that sapphire crystal, which is flat with that inner AR coating. You get this cool fixed bezel there. I think it looks great. It has that nice brushing on it that does follow the brushing on the case as well, which is very, very nice. You have a screw down crown, which is great. The movement inside is a pretty interesting movement. Some of you are looking at it and going, oh, it looks like an ETA 2824. It's not. It's based on an ETA 2824. It's actually the Swisstech CA-24-041. It's actually spec'd specifically for Creux Automatiq by Swisstech, and this is a 33 joule 36-hour power reserve, 4 hertz beat watch. It has a hacking seconds hand and does offer hand winding. But for all intents and purposes, you can see that it is ETA 2824 based. But obviously, with the complication of the small seconds and everything, there are some extra joules added. And the nice thing is you are still retaining that higher beat rate on the sweep. And then, of course, with that even smaller hand there, it's going to just offer you an even smoother looking sweep visually, which is very, very nice. Now, on the case back, it is a nice display case back. It has that etching around the outside there, as you can see, where you can get a little bit of more information on the specs, which is just really quite lovely. As far as the dial goes, you get that excellent Diamondback pattern there on the dial. You have polished hands. You got that date at 3 o'clock with the really, and of course, right as I'm talking about the date, it's kind of obscured from our vision there, but the nice thing is it's a rounded date window, which is really cool, and it's also framed, so it kind of matches the aesthetic of the small seconds register, as well as the aesthetic of the indices. So it's kind of a little halfway, because it is, it does have the framing similar, but then the nice thing is you actually do get a matching date disc, so it's not quite an eyesore. And I think it's actually a really cool, interesting look. So it's different, but it's not different just to be different. It's different and it looks good. So big props from that standpoint. Now, as far as the lume goes, it is listed as Swiss Superluminova. It glows blue, so I'm assuming it's BGW9, but I didn't see that on the specs. As far as the water resistance goes, you guys might have read it on the case back. This is water resistant up to 5 atmospheres or 50 meters. But because it does have that screw down crown, it does offer you a nice bit of feeling of security and whatnot. If you get this thing dirty or sweaty and you want to run it underneath a sink or something like that. Now, as far as the bracelet goes, let's start off with this excellent rubber strap, guys. As you can see, it has a nice taper, so it's a bit thicker here. And then thinner, and then this is just like super soft, so really nice from that standpoint. Obviously the keepers are very clean, nicely contoured, as you can see, and signed. And then you actually get a really, really nice matching buckle here, fully milled little finger there on the tang buckle, and then also fully coated. So this thing is going to look good for quite some time, so very impressive from that standpoint. It does have a 26 millimeter down to 18 millimeter taper, so a little bit wider, of course, because it is an integrated bracelet, and then it gets quite thin down here, which helps with how comfortable this is going to wear. Now, the bracelet is a real star, obviously. As much as the rubber was a nice surprise, the bracelet, I think, is really what draws people into this piece. It's just that damn good. Look at that Diamondback pattern. I mean, that's fantastic. The way it hits the light, it almost has this kind of almost like a black chrome effect to it because of that that beautiful hard coat there. This thing is excellent, guys. Again, similar, it has the same footprint, so you're going to get that 26 down to 18 millimeter taper, except here you're going to see push pin connectors, which, you know, it's one of those things. Is it the greatest system on earth? No. Is it the worst? You know, I don't think so either. You know, I've never seen pins back out before. Pin and collar would have been nice, but obviously then it makes it a little bit more complicated to size, and not everybody's comfortable with that. I just happen to be, because I size all my watches and tons of watches, and then I have the ones that I review too. This has a really nice kind of pressure fit clasp there, and then what they added was a nice little extra bit of security, and I think it actually does look quite nice. I was a little bit iffy on it at first, if it really added anything aesthetically to have this locking fold over clasp here, but I think it's nice, and then it adds a place where they can sign it, and it gives it just a sportier feel. So I gotta say, I'm on board with it, you know, after further review. So with all that said, guys, let's actually get these on wrist for a closer look, see how they wear, and what type of on wrist impressions I can give you. All right, as you can see on my 7¼ inch wrist, this 40 millimeter watch wears extremely well, and those wide you know, bracelet links there do help everything feel quite proportional. I gotta say, a big fan of this. I wore it a little bit higher on the wrist bone than I probably normally would, so I'll scoot it down there. Not too far. I don't want to feel like I'm wearing it on my wrist. Definitely above the wrist, as you can see. I think absolutely a stunner. Look at the light show this thing has. The nice thing is you're not only enjoying that flat, polished bracelet, but you're also getting those beautifully done mirror finish center links, which of course extend the Diamondback theme. So really cool. Ties into that kind of you know, snake motif that they got going. But here's the surprise, sweetheart of the show. This thing on rubber, I mean, it's just versatile, man. I wore this with shorts and a t-shirt, and it's just one of those things that just gives you kind of a little bit of a luxury feel while still feeling infinitely sporty. So really dig that from that standpoint. Let's go ahead and get a little bit closer. Of course, as you get closer, you're gonna feel like there's some lens distortion. It's gonna be a little bit larger, but you get an idea with the arm in there. It's really nice. It has presence. It's only a 40 millimeter watch, so it's not gonna wear gigantic, but at the same time, because of that finishing there, it does have a great presence from a case perspective. And then of course that dial is just ridiculous, guys. That pattern on the dial, I mean, everything is just executed to such a high level, and it doesn't look like anything else, right? Like sure, it has that porthole style look, but the shape of the case, the bracelet links, everything, the choice to use a small seconds, I mean, maybe you can compare it to, you know, one of the Cartier sports watches that came out recently, but I mean, other than that, there's not really a lot of people that are doing this, at least not doing it accessible and excited like this. And I think this is just a cool, exciting, interesting design that's different enough to feel special, but you know, not so wild that it's off-putting, right? It's not something you have to find for a special occasion. I do plan to add the blue dial model to my personal collection because I've just been so impressed with this model, but honestly, the color combination is growing on me. What I like is that although it's not like a full gilt setup, with those gold tone accents that you're getting here, it does make it a little bit more versatile when it comes to wearing earth tones, browns, greens, and stuff like that. So I think that's a really nice touch. And, you know, for those of you that have collections of watches to the point to where you're kind of trying to coordinate them with your outfit, this is something that could offer that special niche and kind of fall into there and add a lot of wearability. So, I mean, on the wrist, this thing wears like an absolute dream. And I gotta say, I'm really impressed with it. Look at how low slung that is. It just rides on the wrist super well. And then of course, same story for the rubber strap. But let's actually go ahead and get some Lume shots going for you. Let's go ahead and hit the lights. As you can see, it definitely does the job. It's not some crazy tool watch. It's not a deep diver. So it doesn't have to have crazy lume, but it is nice that it does have pretty decently applied lume. It's pretty thick and whatnot, and does read really well. Of course, you don't get that illuminated seconds hand. So too bad, so sad if you're not sure if this is running or not. But one thing I do like to do when I do these Lume shots is also work in some low light transitions, so you can, one, see how the light renders the colors and the textures on the watch, whether you're looking at that beautiful dial or you're looking at the excellent brushing and that fine high polish there as the light glides over it, and just kind of harsher lighting conditions, more high contrast here where you're able to see some of the imperfections. And in this case, I have to say I'm quite impressed with what I'm seeing. Of course, guys, there's going to be some cloudiness from the sweat here in the studio, because it gets quite hot under the lights. But you know what? This thing, it looks gorgeous, especially considering that it is a review loaner. So this thing has been through its paces. So I'm really, really surprised pleasantly by how nice this thing is. Look at the way that dial just lights up. And it's, even though it has all this going on, it really takes some crazy lighting for it to be partially, kind of hard to read. But I think generally the handset stand out well enough, and even in transitional lighting here where you're getting a lot of bouncing, a lot of textures and colors and shapes bouncing off that dial, it's still quite readable. And all you got to do is twist your arm a little bit and then it just gets even more readable there. So really beautiful, super impressive from that standpoint. All right, guys, so let's talk about it. The Creux Automatiq Diamondback. This thing is killer. Obviously, you guys saw it wears like a dream. Quite thin and low slung. It just hugs a wrist. It's visually super manageable, really due to those integrated lugs. So it looks compact on the wrist, but it has presence, which is nice. It has pops, but it's not a loud watch. It doesn't shout at you, but it does let you know that it's there, and it's quite impressive to look at from a non-watch connoisseur perspective, as well as a watch geek, right? There's a lot of little fun details there, I think, for watch geeks to enjoy, as well as just kind of your average everyday folks who might just think, wow, that looks really cool and expensive. As far as model variations go, there's the blue dial, which is the CA-06, and then there's also a two-tone green dial model, which is the CA-08. Now, as far as comparable models go, guys, like I mentioned in the beginning of the video, there are more and more integrated steel sports models coming out, really trying to capture that luxury aesthetic. But I really think the Diamondback captures more than just the look. It actually gives you a very luxury-like feel in a very bold, much less derivative package. So I have reviewed quite a few of these styles of watches in the past on the channel, and I think this one really strikes a special sweet spot where it's quite original looking still, while having, of course, maintaining that universal porthole look to it. So it's recognizable within that space and that style of integrated steel sports watch, but it has so much original character and DNA ingrained into it. It's by no means an homage. If anything, it's an homage to the space within the market. It's not an homage to any one model, any one brand. I mean, maybe besides being an homage to Gerald Genta and his kind of greatness and his versatility and making porthole style watches that look cool across all these different brand labels. So for me, guys, bottom line, this is an extremely well finished and executed piece. It's a gorgeous little Swiss made watch at that, which is another pleasant surprise. And it really somehow managed to feel like it should be more expensive. And that's an impressive feat. When I got this watch in hand, it just blew me away. I mean, it feels like this thing should cost $2,500, but it doesn't. It's $1,850 with the bracelet on. And honestly, when I think about small independent brands, micro brands charging that much, it takes a lot for me to kind of get on board with that. But this thing just does so many things special. The chamfers and contours around this case, the hard coat finishing, the choice of textures, shapes, and colors. It all just comes together to offer you something really, really special. So I'm excited to eventually bring one of these models to my personal collection and hopefully do a long-term ownership update for you all. But let me know what you think in the comments below. If you liked the video, please do a like, and if you haven't already, please do subscribe for more content just like this. Thanks, guys.